Hello, and welcome to the Health Bridge podcast. I'm your host, Holly B. Today, I welcome Miguel Batista back to the program. Miguel is the founder of CFS Recovery. His journey started in a place that most can't even imagine. He went from being in a wheelchair, unable to walk or even get out of bed, to being completely bedridden and hospitalized due to chronic fatigue syndrome and later long COVID. He had no energy, no hope, and was told by doctors that recovery was unlikely. And it was one of the darkest times in his life. He couldn't even do basic things like walk or just the basics of caring for himself. But he decided not to give up, and he started researching about how the brain and the nervous system are linked to recovery from chronic illness, and then was lucky enough to meet a doctor who taught him the foundational principles of how to recover. And from that, he developed a system that helped him slowly regain control over his body and his life. He said it wasn't a quick or easy process, but through dedication and a deep understanding of his body, he was able to rebuild his health step by step. And today he's living proof that recovery is possible. He went from being stuck in a cycle of pain and exhaustion to living a full and active life. His mission is to help others who are in the same place that he once was, feeling trapped and hopeless. CSF Recovery is not just a program that he created, it's a way to give people a path out of the darkness to help them reclaim their health just like he did. Because if he could do it, so can they. I was really happy to reconnect with Miguel. He is such a bright light in this really dark world of chronic illness, and especially people with chronic fatigue syndrome, long COVID, people who have been suffering for a long time, not being able to function at a normal, healthy level. So, in this episode, we talk about brain retraining, what that is, what that means, and how that is the key to your recovery from long chronic symptoms. We also talk about how to reframe what's going on with your body when you are flaring or crashing, and why that is so important in creating a brand new health experience and in creating just an overall resiliency when it comes to any type of hardship in your life. We also talk about neurodivergent brains versus neurotypical brains and how extremely common it is to have neurodivergent tendencies when you end up with chronic health issues like chronic fatigue syndrome or like long COVID, and why those are correlated and tied into each other. And then we really go step by step through the process that Miguel takes his clients through, from being potentially bedridden and in a hospital to slowly but surely building up that resiliency to having a normal life and being able to do things like drive a car, buy your own groceries, have an actual job, and be able to function in life optimally versus just barely getting by. If you are curious as to what your brain has to do with it when it comes to any symptoms that you're having, whether it's health issues or just life in general, this is a really great episode for you to learn how to create those reframes and put a different step forward on how you're approaching your hardships. So before we dive in, I do have an ask. I would really appreciate if you would help this podcast grow by subscribing to this podcast on whatever platform it is that you are listening in on, and leaving us a rate and review and a comment if that's a platform that supports commenting as well. All those little things add up to getting this podcast in front of eyes and ears. And that is, of course, the mission, is to share invaluable information with people who need it, who need to know that there are other ways of approaching your health issues than you have learned in the doctor's office. So, thank you so much for taking a moment to do that. And now let's dive into this episode. Miguel Batista, welcome back to the Health Bridge podcast. I'm excited to have a follow up conversation with you. I was just re listening to our first conversation and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Everybody needs to hear this. And now we're here for part two.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I think the last time we did this was just over a year ago, a year and a bit. So a lot has changed in a good way. We've learned a lot of new things about CFS. I'm sure you've seen that the space is developing pretty quickly. A lot of people are recovering now, a lot more than, or at least we're seeing a lot of it, right, with social media and everything. But I think there's really being a space carved for these recovery stories online. So it's really great to connect here with you again, Holly.
I really wish that I would have been able to come across you and your platform way back when, 20 years ago, when I was in the thick of dealing with chronic fatigue syndrome, because it was rough and nobody knew what the heck was going on. I mean, I never ended up in the hospital. I was definitely semi-functional. I could get to work after a while. I could get to work, but that took all my energy. I stopped hanging
Hmm.
out with friends. I had dreams of traveling and doing all these things and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't function. I could get through my day, but that was it. And that went on for years and years and years. And at the time, all I got from the doctor was, we think you have chronic fatigue syndrome, and it'll probably let up in the next 2 years or so on its own. That was
Mm,
literally all the help I got. So
yeah. And there
I'm
wasn't
sure you
really
had
any
that.
resources online.
Right.
Like you couldn't really just Google this stuff. It's interesting. I was talking to somebody. We were doing a recovery interview. She was in her 70s, but she said she got CFS back in like the 70s. And there is
Oh,
no Google, there's no computer. You can't just call up all these clinics and ask them about this stuff. I mean, they look at you like you're crazy. The closest thing you could find to a solution is going to a library, if you could even get there, and then just looking for books about this stuff. And they obviously didn't really have anything on back then. So I can't imagine how it must have been back in the day without the internet, without YouTube channels and podcasts. How the heck did people get by? It was just like sheer willpower.
I know. I mean, definitely, I don't think there was much Googling when I came down with it. I had only gotten a cell phone maybe a year or two prior. So
Hmm.
there wasn't, I don't even think YouTube was around yet. I'm sure it
Yeah.
wasn't. So yeah, I was just left to my own devices and it took a really long time for me to start putting the puzzle pieces together. So I'm just so happy that you're a resource for people because it's really no joke. Chronic fatigue is no joke. And long COVID kind of goes hand in hand with that. And I know you do a lot of work with long COVID. And I'm curious for like people that are listening in that are in the thick of it. I'm sure they're Googling like crazy trying to figure out what to do. What would you say to them? Because they've probably hit up against a lot of walls, a lot of closed doors when they're trying to figure out, is it this path? Is it this path? What's going to help me?
Hmm. Well, first of all, I would say I would empathize with them and say I totally understand how you feel. For people who don't know my backstory, I had all of these different symptoms. I had to really stop living my life for about 4.5 years. There were little glimpses of becoming normal again, but I was very symptomatic for about 4.5 years. Was in the hospital many times from severe crashes. There were many bouts where I was just stuck at home for 3 to 6 months, where even just sitting outside, like the sun hurt. I had to wear blindfolds and earplugs. And at my worst, at rock bottom, I was bedridden completely for 8 months. I couldn't even really shower, right? My grandma, who was 70 at around 70 at the time, had to help bring me to the shower and wipe me down, and couldn't even feed myself. I was in the hospital for 2 months actually. I had to learn how to use a wheelchair and a walker and really build my life from scratch. So I definitely understand how difficult it is, not just physically, but throughout that whole time. Like it takes an emotional toll on you as a person because you also lose your identity. And then you're out here trying to look for help. No one's really helping you. The doctors are looking at you like you're crazy. They're throwing medication at you. You're trying all these different supplements and treatments. And it's like this roller coaster of hopefully this next thing works. And then it doesn't work and you feel even worse. And then it's just like a downward spiral. So for those people who have come across this video, I mean, the good news is, you're still here. You're still here fighting, looking for answers. And that's the kind of person who will overcome something like CFS, right? Somebody who's out there looking for solutions, refuses to give up, refuses to accept that this is going to be the rest of my life, as Google says it will be, which is not true. I would say just when you're online researching these different things, really try to focus on the recovery stories and the more positive side because it's like a very extreme, they're very extreme polar opposites in the online space of CFS and long COVID. On the one hand, you have people really fighting to defend this idea that you can't recover, you can only go into remission, it's impossible to get better. You have these people, but on the other hand, you have hundreds, if not thousands, of recovery stories of people getting their lives back. So you can kind of choose what you want to consume. Now, with the hypersensitive nervous system, that's what I call CFS, your brain is looking for problems to solve. So it will be more attracted naturally to all the scary stuff, all the fear mongering. So really try your best to focus on the recovery stories because once you see enough of those recovery stories, it's just undeniable proof that you can get better. And eventually it just clicks in your brain. You're going to come across a story that sounds nearly identical to yours, where you hear their story and you're like, I have that. I have those exact symptoms. I got sick that same way. Wait a minute. That person is just me in another body and they got better. So I could do it too. So that's what I would say is focus on the recovery stories and then keep going down that rabbit hole because that's a good rabbit hole to go down, not the scary, sick for life kind of stuff.
Definitely is. We touched on something in the first episode that we didn't really tease out, and I'd love to touch on this further. You mentioned that growing up, you always had this really hyperactive mind that was hard to quiet down. And we sort of brushed over that. You had mentioned that, you came to realize that's not necessarily quote unquote normal. That's not necessarily how a normal brain functions. And I love to talk more about that because I have definitely realized that I am the same way. I am naturally that way. I didn't realize that that was not neurotypical, I guess is maybe the right
Yeah.
term these days to call it. And so I'd love to talk more about that. What did you learn about that? What does that mean? What does that imply? And how do we get more control over that hyperactive brain, which can lead to that hyperactive nervous system?
Yeah. And it's funny. I've been thinking about this a lot, especially in the last couple months, because I'm noticing now there's a lot of old Miguel tendencies coming back. So growing up, it was very difficult to sit still. I was always in class, like shaking my leg, bouncing up and down, tapping on a table, looking around. I could never just focus on one thing unless I really, really was into it. So it was hard to sit still. Meditation was out the window. We've tried it in class. I think we tried it a few times. I went to a private school, so we were very religious. And I remember a lot of it would be sitting there in prayer, and you're not supposed to move. You're just supposed to sit there, close your eyes. And it was very difficult for me. And it was a pattern that kind of only got stronger and stronger over time to the point where I pushed so hard, by my 20s, I pretty much had CFS. And then when I started recovering, I had to completely shift my brain into like a parasympathetic mode, right? It's almost like if you imagine this scale of stimulation, right? This is the maximum up here. Think of like a monk in the Himalayan mountains, sitting there all day. That's like down here. Crazy lifestyle is up here. My natural tendency was to stick right around like here, nearly maxing it out. That's where my nervous system and brain was the most comfortable, right? So once I started recovering, I had to learn how to turn that dial down to about here because it was cranked up. Think about it like I was redlining my nervous system for all those years without realizing. And it was like, it was almost like an addiction to, I guess, the chaos. I'm like comfortable in chaos, if that makes sense. If there's a bunch of stuff going on, I actually feel better. I would feel better than if there was nothing going on. Like the more quiet it was and the more still things were, it would actually stress me out. I'm like, I gotta be doing something. So once I started recovering, like really recovering, once I was in the hospital and my doctor taught me about this nervous system stuff, how I need to pretty much stop redlining my nervous system, I had to shift all the way down here, parasympathetic mode. Like, I don't care about anything. I'm good. I'm not stressed out. There could be a tsunami coming to hit this city. I don't care. Can't control it. I'm just going to enjoy the sunshine. So it was like an extreme opposite actually. But that's where I made the most progress. I just stopped caring about stuff. And then naturally, as you start to reintegrate back into life, these old personality traits start coming back in layers. So you start working a little bit more. You start picking up new hobbies. You start really getting into these things. And for me, it was videography. And then I kind of went all out in it, like probably 8 to 10 hours a day getting out of the hospital. It was me learning about videography, but it was so much fun. It took my brain away from the symptoms and I loved it. But that was about 6 or 7 years ago. More recently, I noticed that my brain is like thriving on the chaos a little bit again. But it's different from before because now I know how to turn that dial down. For example, yesterday, I didn't really do anything. No, what is it? Monday? No, it was 2 days ago. On this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, didn't do anything. I kind of wanted to work. I worked for like 2 hours. And then I allowed myself to sit there and watch YouTube videos and just hang out on my couch and then go to the beach, play guitar, and do nothing productive, according to old Miguel. But it was nice. But I'll still push myself quite hard. I actually tested this. I was at Tomorrowland. I don't know if everybody knows about this who's watching right now, but Tomorrowland, it's the largest music festival in the world. There's about 400,000 people in one place over 2 weekends. So about 200,000 people a day. And you're in a crowd of like 100,000 people jumping up and down, lights and lasers in your face, really loud music, like your whole body's shaking. And I was thinking, man, I used to be in a wheelchair. I used to have to wear a blindfold and earplugs to even sit up. I had to get spoon fed. And here I am jumping up and down for like 6 hours in the heat in summer in another country with all the stimulation. And it's like my body kind of liked it. And so it's just really interesting. Those old tendencies are still there. I think naturally, it's just in our DNA. If you're someone who likes all that action, you're naturally going to lean towards that. But the difference now, the reason why I don't crash and I don't feel symptoms, haven't felt them for years, is because I know when to turn the dial down on the stimulation. So I knew coming back, right, after that big trip, I knew I was going to take it easy for a few days and just completely decompress. Old Miguel would have jumped right back into work and taken no breaks. When you truly, truly rest, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, I mean, you can bounce back from a long trip like that very quickly. Like 48 hours, I was back to 100%, hitting the gym hard. And actually, my capacity increased. My cardio actually improved. I went to the gym. I was like not getting tired. So that's kind of my long answer. I know I went on a rant there, but
Well, it sounds like it's learning how to harness this as a superpower and
yes,
work with
exactly.
it versus letting it run you.
Yeah.
And I think I have so many more tools and I'm worlds better than I used to be. But I do have those tendencies and I recognize that on some days I'm not as good at dialing it back or tuning into it and working with it versus just sticking on the go, go, go. because I have this huge to-do list, right? I am the only person working on my business, so it's all up to me, right? And so I think as we look at these things as our superpowers and say, okay, how can I use this to my benefit versus letting it run my life? Like that's when we start finding answers. And that's when we start really making big gains in
Hmm.
how we're going about our life and how we are experiencing symptoms. And we can slowly start to tune those symptoms down as we rest, regenerate, heal, and allow that process to happen. It's so
Hmm.
hard when you are always wanting to go, 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 right? Really quick, Holly B here. I just wanted to interrupt the podcast to ask you for a quick favor. Can you take just a moment to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are listening in on? It makes a world of a difference. And the reach of this podcast, it takes like literally under 10 seconds. So go do that right now. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And now back to the episode.
Yeah. Yeah. That feeling becomes, it's almost like an addiction, that adrenaline rush of productivity. But you're absolutely right. It is a double-edged sword. And you have to learn how to use that sword to your advantage, right? It can work for you or against you. I think of like Bruce Lee with his nunchucks, right? He's really good at the nunchucks because he's mastered them. But you look at someone who's just starting out, they'll try to do the same tricks. They'll like whack themselves in the head and they'll get bruised up, hit their elbows. And it's not a pretty sight, but it just takes repetition and understanding yourself to learn how to use that superpower. Same thing with, well, just overall neurodivergent, right? We talk about neurotypical, which is you're like the majority of people, how majority of people think. Then there's neurodivergent. Our brains work a little bit differently. I find with myself, if I'm not really into a certain topic and I'm not really intrigued by it, it's very difficult to pay attention. If you looked at me and looked at how my brain worked, you would see my mind jumping all over the place. You'd think maybe I do have ADD or ADHD, but I'm able to still get things done because, for example, in high school, I could not sit still in class. I was always the class clown, could never pay attention. Very difficult. So in class, I was zoned out. I was looking out the window doing whatever. I couldn't tell you what the teacher talked about at the end of most classes, but I still got straight A's. I got straight A's, honor student, because I went home. And the reason I actually did the homework and got the straight A's was I think my mom gave me a prize or something. She was like, you get straight A's all year, I'll buy you a computer or I'll give you whatever. That was my motivating factor. So I wasn't motivated to really learn. I was motivated by something else, but it was important enough. So I just went home, read the books in like 30 minutes, covered what we covered in class, but instead of an hour of my attention, I'd look at it for 15 minutes and be like, okay, makes sense. Do the homework. Boom. So it's more like it's like a very hyper focused laser versus like a flashlight that can take in different kinds of information. It's very like one task, another task, but laser like focus. And I've learned how to use that to my advantage. Turn that laser on and off.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely relate to a lot of what you said. Looking back, I was not the fidgety person who couldn't pay attention in class. I definitely paid attention in class. So I don't think and girls typically don't present these ADHD type of divergent symptoms in the same way that boys do, where it's a lot of the leg tapping and the fidgeting and stuff. Understanding that girls don't necessarily present that way. They keep it more internalized and up in their head, which was definitely
Mm-hmm.
me. And so, nobody ever picked up on it. And I didn't really even pick up on it myself until the last year or so that I've been starting to like learn more about this. And I find it fascinating. And I'm just curious, do you find these tendencies a lot in your community?
Mm-hmm. In terms of neurodivergence,
Yeah.
absolutely. I would say it's very difficult to find someone who doesn't have that. I think almost every single person I've talked to has some kind of ADD or ADHD or perfectionism. Perfectionism, very type A, I would say type A personality. I've yet to meet somebody who got CFS or long COVID and was just completely chilled out, type B personality. They were really laid back. And all the people we see, and we've had over 2,000 people come through our recovery systems. I haven't met a single person who wasn't type A personality. The good news is like we kind of teach them not just how to fix the symptoms and get out of the trenches of CFS, but how do you go back to not back to life? How do you create a new kind of 2.0 version of yourself that so you can live in a way that's more sustainable to ensure that you never get this again? How do we make you anti-fragile? And the way to do that and long-term sustainability starts with those kind of patterns. It's not getting rid of the type A personality. It's how do you use it to your advantage, and how do you not redline your engine so far that the engine kind of just blows up? You could still redline it, but we got to do some maintenance here and there. Got to tune it up every now and then and lay off the gas, and then you'll be golden.
And so, where do you start when people come into your program? Like, what is the number one thing that we're starting with?
Yeah. So the number one thing is actually before they even get in, I mean, we start with a nervous system health assessment just to see where they're at. We just want to pinpoint and make sure that there's nothing else going on physically with their organs and things like that, or the doctors just don't have any answers for them. So once we can identify, okay, this is probably CFS, we do that nervous system health assessment. So now we have a starting point. So we look at it as like, okay, this is the most severe someone can be. This is like completely bedridden, can't move. After that, there's couch-bound, house-bound, semi-functional, and functional. And then there's thriving health at the top. So we want to get everybody to thriving health up here. Where in this journey are they? Where are they starting? So with the health assessment, we can figure out, okay, maybe you're starting about here. You're housebound. Okay, so for that stage of recovery, there are certain strategies and also certain challenges for those stages. For example, someone who is couch-bound, right? Their challenge is going to be moving more. They're terrified to move, even to start taking showers and start cooking because they don't want to crash and end up back in bed. They're still in that very fragile state. So the strategy for that would be really pacing out the activities, breaking it down specifically for their situation and their symptoms. So if someone had POTS, right, we wouldn't get them to walk around multiple times a day. We'd start by getting them to sit up a little bit more, for example. Less movement, more like just being upright versus somebody who only had mainly brain fog, maybe a dozen other symptoms, but brain fog was their main thing. We'd start introducing screen time, but in short bouts, right? So that would be the strategy for a couch-bound person. But the challenge is the fear of doing those things, of expanding activity. Whereas somebody in the semi-functional state, where they can drive, they can leave the house and do groceries, their challenge is actually the opposite because they're not really afraid to move around. Their challenge is actually moving around too much. They want to do things too fast. They want to kind of catch up to life, make up for all the lost time from the illness. And that's where people can fall into the cycle of doing a little bit too much and then having a big flare up that they can't really handle. Then they're in the cycle of 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. So for that stage, the strategy is also to find, okay, what is the right pace of activity? What are we introducing and in what kind of quantities? So in every stage, it's figuring out what is the optimal pace of activity, the kinds of activities you're doing. We like to separate them into different buckets of like physical, cognitive, and emotional activities. Also, what kind of brain retraining are you doing at that stage for your personality type? Some people hate meditation, absolutely hate it. It actually stresses them out. So we don't even give them that. Give them something else. But the strategy at each level, it definitely involves finding the optimal zone of activity or optimal amount. But then the challenge is, what are the recovery ceilings to get to the next level? That's where we can really like fine tune it. But ultimately, like we teach them how to do that because the goal isn't for us to hold their hand forever. It's how do we get you independent and, spread your wings and fly. And it's always cool to see thrivers graduate. It's, sometimes they won't even come to a call for a month, and they'll message us. They'll be like, I'm so sorry. I missed all the calls. I was busy with my friends and I was on this trip. And we're like, don't apologize for that. That was the whole goal. Like, go spread your wings and fly. So that's kind of how we approach it. We really try to develop like a system for this, because there's enough information out there. It's kind of like if someone wants to build a Lego house, they go into a room and there's like 10,000 pieces. How do you build something that kind of flows and is strong and goes together, right? With us, we're kind of like giving different sets of instructions based on what they want that house to look like. How do you want your life to look like? All right, well, here's the playbook for that. That way you know which pieces to put in what order.
So you talked about brain retraining, or you mentioned brain retraining. What does that mean for somebody who's never heard that before?
Yeah. So brain retraining, all it is, it's neuroplasticity, where essentially changing the patterns in your brain, right? Because right now, the more severe you are with CFS, the more in a survival state your brain is. So any kind of stimulation, for example, light is stimulation. Some people, they can be in a dark room. As soon as you open the window or open the blinds, the light comes in, your brain sees it as a threat. So then you get pain, you get palpitations, you get fatigue, shortness of breath just from light. So any kind of stimulation, your brain interprets it as danger. So what we're doing is we're trying to fix that interpretation. And think about it like a software, right? Our brains are like supercomputers. And right now, there's just a big glitch in the software. There's some wires in the wrong place, right? It's the wrong system, essentially. There's been a glitch. So what we're doing with brain retraining is kind of manually updating that software through our thoughts, through our thinking patterns, and things like that. And you can reroute it away from survival mode to thrival mode. So if you think of a normal person who's just jogging down the street, no symptoms, they're healthy, that person's brain is not in survival mode, right? And if we want to drill down even deeper, get into the science stuff, there's a certain part of your brain that is responsible for a lot of these symptoms. It's the amygdala, right? At least from what we've seen. That amygdala is your fight or flight center, your survival center, your freeze center. So when you go into a crash, actually, I'm sure everybody watching this right now, they know what a crash is. Like, you could barely move. It hurts to move. It hurts to breathe. It hurts to think. That's your brain putting you in complete freeze mode. It doesn't want you to do anything. It thinks its life is in danger and there's a threat right there beside you. Like a bear's going to eat you or a tiger's going to attack. So it puts you in freeze mode. But it's a glitch because there is no actual danger there. It thinks there's a danger, right? So you start seeing threats that aren't really there. I got a mole on my skin. It was always there. I remember I was in a crash, look down, see a mole on my skin. I'm like, that's cancer. That's why I feel this way. This is definitely cancer. Called my grandma and I was like, we got to go get this tested. I think this is the cause of it. And it was just such a irrational thought. But in that state, it's hard to decipher your thoughts and emotions, right? Because you're going haywire. So brain retraining, the way we teach it is you're just learning how to respond well to symptoms. And that really is the golden rule of recovery, because if you respond well, it takes you out of that downward spiral. Because how it typically works is somebody does something or there's some kind of stimulation. It could be on your phone. Maybe you're scrolling for too long. Now you have a headache. Now you have a migraine. Now you feel nauseous. Now you start getting frustrated, right? So those physical symptoms, they cause a lot of fear because you're like, I hope it doesn't get worse. I hope I don't crash. And those emotions fuel more symptoms, which fuel more emotions, which fuel more symptoms. So it's like a snowball effect, right? So the way to stop that from happening is by responding well, because you're cutting out that feedback loop right there. You feel the symptoms, but you don't panic about it. You don't become overly emotional. You just look at it with logic and say, oh, okay, well, I just stimulated my nervous system. It's just it's just an adjustment period. And we call flare-ups adjustment periods because it's essentially like your nervous system adjusting to the new level of stimulus. But it needs some time and space to get there. So typically it's like you increase some activity, then you feel some symptoms, then you dial it back. Just like working out in the gym. You go work out, you get sore for a few days, then you dial it back. If you wait long enough, right? A few days or however long, when the symptoms calm down, you jump back in and you will actually have more capacity. Very similar to exercise physiology.
I like the adjustment period. I like that term because just using that term reframes everything.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
feels physically different in the body when you're using that.
Yep. Yep. It's a great reframe because now you're not seeing the symptoms or flare up as something negative or like you screwed up or you did something wrong or you're going backwards. Um, Even with flare ups, a lot of people call every single flare up a crash. When I think of crash, because I used to use that word all the time, I I basically associated crash with going back to square one, back to zero. You have to restart the whole journey. After all that work you just did, you crashed. Now you have to start it all over again. So you feel like you just undid all your progress. So the term adjustment period, it makes it make more sense. It's like, no, you didn't go all the way back to square one. You're just sore. That's it. Your nervous system is basically sore. That's what I told myself. I was like, well, I used to be an athlete, used to work out a lot. I've been sore thousands of times. So this is kind of just like soreness for the nervous system, but it's a little bit more than sore. It's just there's pain, there's nausea, there's, floaters in my vision, the shortness of breath. But nonetheless, it's just that the valley of discomfort in order to get to the next level, but you just don't push through. You dial it back a little bit, and it's like a springboard to get to the next level, really. And that really, really helped me reframe those flare-ups to the point where I actually started looking forward to them. Like I'd get a flare-up and I'd be like, oh, I'm excited. It's time to level up. It's my opportunity. So I really replaced the that whole idea of a flare-up. I replaced that with something I saw as opportunity. I'm like, oh, this is really my nervous system seeing if I'm ready for the next level. If I go freak out about it, if I go try to push through, I'm going to show it that I'm not ready. So I need to gain its trust back because I've lost its trust after all these years of pushing myself. It's actually trying to save me from myself. So I need to show it that I'm responsible now, that I'm in control of my emotions, and that I'm not just going to redline this engine till it blows up like I did before. So it's a process.
It's really creating a partnership with your nervous system.
Yes.
Versus seeing it as the enemy and like it's out to get you. One
Yeah.
thing that I've been really dialing in on a lot lately is when you have symptoms, that's your nervous system trying to protect you, right?
Mhm.
And if we can reframe to see it that way, like I've been deep diving on German new medicine lately, which
Mhm.
is a whole different concept of how to look at symptoms and health issues. And I don't remember the exact term they use, but basically when your body is emitting symptoms of something, they see it as that's actually it's like a healing period. I think they use a term similar to that. It's your symptoms are actually signs of a healing period and your body being in repair rather than your body functioning against you and trying to take you down. So
Mhm.
I just think it's such a powerful reframe. And if we can start approaching health conditions in this way, like everything would be revolutionized. Western medicine, if they could just see it this way, it would be revolutionized. But Western medicine is so focused on just symptom management. Like, I'm so amazed that your path to healing actually came through, I think, one of your medical doctors. Is that right?
Hmm.
Because that is
Yeah.
not the typical story when it comes to anybody that's had to step into the holistic health or alternative realm to figure out what's going on in their body.
Hmm.
Usually, they've had to step away from the Western medicine path because it's not actually giving them any tools to help other than manage their symptoms with a pill bottle.
Yeah.
And so I think that
Yeah.
that's really a special story in your case. And I hope that it's one that we start hearing more and more because I think there are a lot of really good doctors out there that really do want to help. And when they can start stepping into this arena of healing, in addition to what they can do for symptom management, there's a lot of power there. And we can really start making some big differences in people's lives.
Hmm. Yeah. And I got very lucky with my doctor because I'm good friends with him now. I still see him every 3 or 4 months just to check in, say what's up, show him what we're doing, and keep him updated.
Hey, I just wanted to jump in here and interrupt the program for just a hot minute. You know that I'm so passionate about this podcast, but what I'm also really passionate about is helping women with lupus minimize their symptoms, boost their energy so that they can indulge in life again. So if you are a woman who is struggling with lupus, who is sick and tired of being sick and tired, who's struggling to manage your flares, if you're finding that your lupus symptoms are just really getting in the way of you being able to live your life the way you want to, I feel you. I've been there myself and I felt the same way. And what I've found is that there are a certain set of health fundamentals that once applied, will support you in your foundational health. They will support you in building and maintaining that energy, minimizing flares, and allowing you to, again, indulge in life and follow your passions. So, if that is something that you are interested in creating for yourself, let's jump on a call together. I will walk you through the process that I use with my clients to get them from sick and tired to strong foundation of health by implementing my Health Bridge protocol. If this is something you're interested in chatting more about, I would love to talk to you. Apply for a free clarity call with me, and I look forward to getting to know you soon. And now back to the episode.
But I was asking him, how come there's not more doctors like you? Because you helped me. And he said, well, one, they don't they don't really there's not this big incentive for doctors to continue education after doing 15 to 20 years of schooling. The last thing they want to do is read more textbooks and learn more, right? That's one. Two, the system is it's so tight with red tape and yellow tape or whatever you want to call it that it's hard to actually talk about these things with patients. And he even said, you know, I came across your path at a perfect time because had I seen you 3 to 5 years ago, I wouldn't have even tried this approach. I would have just given you medication like I typically did. But for some reason, I saw something in you. Like the first the first few minutes of our very first conversation, he could tell like I had this look in my eyes where I was actually listening to what he was saying. A lot of people he worked with, because he was a psychiatrist, a lot of people he worked with, it kind of just goes in one ear out the other. They don't really implement it, the things he's telling them. They're not curious about it. They're just kind of there because they were forced to go there. But with me, he saw that look of I was actually curious. I really wanted to get better. And I told him, I'm like, just I'll do anything to get my life back. Just tell me what to do. If you told me to eat cardboard and I'd heal, I would eat cardboard right now. And everything he was saying, I'd be asking questions about it. I'm like, oh, okay. So with that, tell me how that works again. Oh, okay. So it's kind of like this. And I'd confirm what he was saying. And he could see I was like a student. So he became really passionate within that 3 week time span. And he just went deeper and deeper and deeper because I showed interest and because I was recovering so fast. Like I went from bedridden for about 8 months and getting worse and worse and worse to a week, I think it was within a few days after meeting him, I graduated from bedridden to the wheelchair, just sitting in a wheelchair. Then the next day, I was rolling around in the wheelchair. Keep in mind, I was extremely symptomatic this whole time. It was by no means easy, but I was responding better. I had more logic in my brain. So the other parts of my brain were working now. It wasn't full survival mode. And then within a week of that, I was using a walker. And then within another week, I was standing on my own 2 feet. Like my legs were just bones. I had no more muscle on them. It's very shaky, but he could see my pace of progress. And the fact that I was showing up, asking him questions every day, everything he showed me, he would write stuff down on a board. I would write it down on a paper. I still have the papers. It's a stack like this thick. And for the next, I think, 2 months out of the hospital, I drew all of those diagrams every single day. So it was like burned into my brain. And because I knew when I flare up, logic goes out the window. You forget most of the things when you're flaring up, but if it's burned into my brain, then there's no way I could forget it. So yeah, I got very lucky with him, and that's why I felt a huge responsibility, not just like I want to do it, but it's like I have to do this. I have to share this information with the world because I was given this gift of information that saved my life. It would be wrong for me to just keep it all inside. So let me start filming YouTube videos. Let me post this everywhere online. And I'm glad I ended up doing that. And that's kind of why I post so much. That's why I do what I do. I feel I owe it to the universe to share this information.
I'm so glad that you are because you're helping so many people. And I want to also mention that, I was saying if only Western medicine can wrap their minds around this
Yeah.
side of healing, I want people to understand too that you don't necessarily need your Western doctor to have an understanding of this to move forward with it, right? Like
Hmm.
we can implement and start learning about neuroplasticity and how to respond differently through your YouTube videos, through my podcast, through working with coaches like the two of us, by reading books. Like we can learn this and implement this and still be working with our doctors because a lot of people are still going to be needing that symptom management. So I'm not saying don't
Yeah.
do it. Do it while you are learning this other approach and you can implement them together. And as this approach starts taking over and you start reframing and you can start having a different experience with your symptoms and slowly stepping up in your thresholds, we can be monitoring that with your doctors and slowly start weaning off some of those medications. I just want to stress like this can all work together,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
your practitioner or your doctor know much about the other side. It can all work together.
100%. Like you don't have to, let's say someone's on 10 medications and supplements. You don't have to stop that cold turkey. I would actually suggest definitely don't do that. But yeah, they can definitely work in conjunction. I think how I see supplements and medications, unless it's prescribed by a doctor for some kind of specific issue where you absolutely need it to survive, I think a lot of medications and supplements is more for the acute relief. Like painkillers. Oh, your stomach hurts, take this. Oh, your body's burning, take certain painkillers. That's more of like an in the moment fix, not really a long term solution. And actually, long term can, in a lot of cases, do more damage than good because that medication takes a toll on your body. But over windows of time, it's relatively okay. But in conjunction with that, I think what will lead to a long term sustainable recovery to where you're anti fragile, or you could go live your life and not have to worry about this ever coming back, is learning really how your body works, learning how to really recover and doing the work, the inner work required to to fix this thing. And the truth is nobody's going to come along and fix it for you. Even my doctor, he didn't fix it for me. He showed me what to do. He gave me the tools, he showed me the path, told me what was going to happen, told me I was going to flare up, told me my mind would play tricks on me, every flare up. And it was up to me to implement the tools. But I think when you know what tools to use and when you know how to use them, it makes it so much easier. I think the reason why a lot of people maybe don't give this another shot is because they've tried other things in the past that didn't work, right? So it's like, why would this be different? I'm just going to be wasting my time and the limited energy that I do have learning something that's not going to work. And I was there too until I saw, until I met my doctor and he had a whole path carved out. He's like, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. So that's why we really try to show people what we do now is we also show people a trajectory of like, this is what you'll be doing. This is what your plan will look like. This is what you'll expect. This is what you can expect by 30 days. This is what you can expect 3 months from now, 6 months, 12 months. You should be, if you're bedridden right now, within that 90-day period, you should be at the couch bound phase. You're showering, you're cooking food. At month 6, you should be here. And by 12 months, you should be good to go. Right. And we have markers in place. So at least they know the path forward. It's not just like, YOLO, let's jump in and try this and see what happens. There's an actual predictable path forward.
Have you found, and I expect I know the answer to this, but have you found that in implementing all of these changes in response and in changes in your neuro patterns intentionally, that it didn't just affect your health experience, it spilled over into your life overall and in any other hardships that you come across? It's giving you tools for your whole life experience, not just to get you out of chronic fatigue.
Absolutely. All the skills you learn through recovering from CFS, not just recovering, but even being in the trenches of it, even going through a crash, there are certain things that you learn about yourself that you would never be able to learn. For example, coming out of the hospital is very difficult financially. I burned all my money, was living on credit cards. I was borrowing money to put $6 in the gas tank just to get somewhere else. That was stressful to a normal person. That's stressful. To me, those kind of stressors compared to I can't breathe, I might die in 60 seconds, I can't move, I can't eat, can't have my life back. This this financial stress was nothing compared to this thing. So I was like, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. Eventually that's going to sort itself out. Eventually it did. Or, you know, just normal life stressors, business stressors, when things are going wrong, when a software breaks and there's like 100 messages flooding into your inbox or something, and you need to reply in like 30 minutes. Initially, there's that kind of overwhelm and a little bit of panic, but then you just take a deep breath and think, have I ever overcome something like this before? And you're like, yeah, I've overcome something 1,000 times harder. I've done the impossible, essentially. I couldn't walk. There was a time when I would have been happy if I could just be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. And I was like, if I could just do that, I'll be happy. So to surpass that, I see everything as like icing on the cake. So there's not really any stressor that can throw me off like I used to be thrown off, like old Miguel used to be thrown off. Because every time you go into a flare up and come out of it, I look at it like forging the samurai sword, right? How are samurai swords made? They go into the fire, they get hammered and beat down, and then they go into some cool water. Every process makes that thing stronger and more resilient. And that's kind of how I saw CFS. You go into it involuntarily, you kind of get beat down by life, by your body, a lot of pain, a lot of, you could call it suffering, but you come out of it just anti-fragile, I would say, but not just physically, but more so mentally. Nothing can really throw you off because now you have this reference point that nothing can ever be as difficult as that. So you come out with this unwavering belief in yourself that you can really do anything you set your mind to. And no matter how hard it gets, you've already been through something worse. So it can't get any worse than that. So I think it gives you this, at least for me, it gives me a crazy sense of confidence in myself that I can do whatever I set my mind to, literally anything. because there was a time when walking was literally impossible. And now I've surpassed that. I can run, I can work out. I did a 10-kilometer race in Hawaii with no training. I showed up on 3 hours of sleep and I saw that they were running the Hawaii Marathon. I was like, that's cool. I've always wanted to run a marathon. It wasn't a full marathon, it was 10K. And I was like, screw it, I'll sign up just to prove to myself that I beat CFS. This is like my flag in the ground that I definitely beat it. Signed up. I actually vlogged it. It's on my YouTube channel. So the whole thing, you see me dying mid race, but I didn't crash and I didn't have any symptoms. So yeah, I think it just makes you more anti-fragile and a 10 times better version of yourself than you went into CFS.
I love that. Miguel, what last thoughts or messages do you have for our listeners today?
I would say just keep on going. Keep on going. I know you're probably watching this video right now, looking at me, looking at Holly, saying, wow, they made it to the other side. They must be superhumans, or they must have some kind of superpower. What's a secret thing that they use? But honestly, we're humans too. We're just like you guys. We were once in your shoes. I was once that person on YouTube looking at all these videos, searching for answers, and I couldn't even sit up in bed, getting like spoon fed. Like I could watch videos on my side with the volume down and not really look at the screen. But if I can do it, if Holly can do it, and there's thousands of recovery stories online with undeniable proof, then you can do it too. And we're nothing special. We're not aliens. We don't have alien blood. We are humans. And, if you need extra help, just keep watching videos like this. You can watch our YouTube channel, CFS Recovery. You can even try out our recovery system. We give a 7-day free trial for everybody just to see if it works for them, see if they like it. It's called the Recovery Academy. But I would say keep on going. And if you're here right now, then it's a good indicator that you have that, I call it the thriver spirit in you, that you're someone who doesn't just give up, is not willing to accept this as the rest of your life, and you're gonna make it to the other side. So my last messages, we'll see you at the top.
Love it. At the top, it's all within you, right? It's all within
Mhm.
your power to do that. We can harness your superpowers, we can figure out what they are, and we can use them for your benefit. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think this conversation is leaving everybody with a lot of hope. I just want to say too, it's about building that resiliency. What you said earlier about searching for the recovery stories versus searching for what's wrong with you and everything that's going wrong and all the symptoms and oh my god, what that stirs up in the brain. It's like search for the recovery too. You have to balance it out. And I've said before, it's like prove to yourself that you're right. If you think you're right when you think there's no hope for you and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, prove to yourself it's right by searching for the opposite and see what you can find.
Mhm.
Just open the
Yeah,
door that way. Thanks
exactly.
so much, Miguel. This was such a great conversation. I'm so glad you came back on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and I'll see you next time.
So, we've talked about a lot in this episode. And what I just want to bring it back to is that that new understanding that your chronic symptoms come down to a hyperactive nervous system. First and foremost, it's ignore the title, ignore the diagnosis, forget about all the different symptomology that goes along with your specific disease or condition, and look at it through the lens of hyperactive nervous system. If he can change that lens and forget about all the specifics of this symptom or that symptom, it makes it a lot easier to tackle the issue and to actually make headway in shifting how you are approaching the condition that you are struggling with. Save this episode and re listen to it multiple times because it's a lot of information to soak in, especially if you're new to this concept of what is actually behind your illness. And I'd love for you to start doing research on this path. If you are one of those people who is always researching every new symptom, sensation that you are struggling with, start looking into this. Go to Miguel's YouTube channel. He has tons of videos on there. He's got amazing stuff on his Instagram. I talk about a lot of this stuff as well on my platform. Start diving into that side of research and start implementing just slowly but surely those reframes. And just in starting there, you will start to notice a difference, but your nervous system is going to fight you. Your neuro pathways are going to try to keep you on the same thought patterns that you're used to having. And so you're going to need to take an active approach in this. And this starts by recognizing those limiting thoughts or those hyperactive nervous system thoughts that are keeping you in symptom mode and fear mode and fight or flight mode, and be able to recognize when you're having them. It's catching those thought patterns as they are happening. And when you can start doing that, then you can start shifting to the response rather than the reaction. And truly, that is where you start taking the power back and redirecting your nervous system towards the rest and digest, towards the healing space, towards the space of safety, and retraining it so that it knows that it's in good hands. I'd love for you to let us know what your biggest takeaway was from this episode. So, wherever you're listening in on, we would love to hear your comments on what you took away from this conversation. And if this is something that you want to dive in further, I do a real big deep dive on this with my clients. We start with all this because I find that the creating that healing mindset, which is one of responding, not reacting, is the biggest key to healing and to getting your life back. So we do, again, a deep dive on this. So if you are curious about what that might look like for you, let's jump on a call together. I have a link for a health strategy session in the show notes, and I would love to see you on my calendar this week. So what are you waiting for? Stop putting it off. There is another approach, and let's do this because you are so worth it. The world needs your light to shine. And when you're stuck in symptom mode, your light is dim. And we need to fix that. So I look forward to connecting with you. And I look forward to seeing you here again on the next episode of the Health Bridge podcast. Thanks so much for listening.